we separate when we come and are born, and we have our own body and we have our own life and our own opinions. And then when we die, we return to this collective. And it's paradoxical because let's just call it spirit world, there, we say there's no time. And as you experience, that's very difficult to manage from our three-dimensional world and our logical world.
As someone who's grieving a loved one, that has been really hard too, because I know my daughter is my daughter, and then I want to see her again as my daughter. I don't want to see her as like this all is one thing, even though that's also beautiful.
And those two things are both true.
Hi, and welcome to the AHA podcast. My name is Allie, and I'm hoping that we can awaken, heal, and align together.
I've heard your story. I watched your video, the crossing over too. That was really cool. Did you have a professional videographer or something? That was really well done.
Yeah, one of my best friends, he's a filmmaker.
Okay.
I know quite a few filmmakers, and I've known him since 1990, and he makes films. And at some point we were talking, and I had told the story so many times to so many people, and I tell the story a lot to people who are dealing with death, losing a loved one or in their own life, they're coming close to death. So it seemed to have a function, like it's a necessary story. It's not really the story you tell at a dinner party. It's like, someone is asking because they need to know. And so we were talking, he's like, we should make a film. And I can't remember the particulars. It was a long time ago. But he made the film, and then we sent it around to film festivals around the world. It went to quite a few. A lot of them were death and dying specific. It went to Dharamsala in India, and that film festival is very much like a Buddhist kind of death and dying film festival.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So since then, it's used for this purpose. Like, I know quite a few people who show it to, some of them ask, they email, can I show my dying loved one your film? Like that, of course, that's what it's for. So
yeah.
Well, I'm glad you found that. Like, did it help you in managing?
Yeah, it helped me a ton. Like, that's really, my daughter passed January of last year, so it's been a little over a year, and it's been, obviously you can imagine it's hell. She was
Crazy.
14, and like it's really hard for me to talk about it without getting emotional.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
I sit with people who have had close people die. I'm with them all the time. Yesterday I was with someone for hours, and 2 days before that. This is kind of what I do. So I'm really glad that you found that film. Because I know what you're dealing with. My first wife passed away 10 years ago. Our daughters turned 26 yesterday. So, it's different for you because, it's different for everyone. But like, I kind of know what's going on, and it's no joke.
It is no joke.
You're very brave to, start a podcast where you're actually jumping right into this material. Like, obviously you want to move through this, and 1 year is not a long time. So my heart goes to you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely changes you, like completely changes you.
Yeah.
I heard you say on yours, one of your things you talked about how before you kind of were raised in like a religious, dogmatic, more, that's like my same story too.
Yeah.
And then I kind of found my way out of that after just going through all these reading and investigating things.
Yeah.
And then I didn't believe in anything. And then when she passed, I was just like, I would say what you call it, agnostic. Just like, I don't know. I don't care. Like, I'm busy with my life,
Get it. Yeah.
And after she passed, it became the biggest obsession of my life. I'm like, I need to know where she is. I know she's somewhere. Her energy's somewhere. And we've had crazy electrical things happen not long after she passed, and just very obvious that something's going on with lights and fans and just turning on in her room and in my kids' room. I have two other kids.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, like I'm going to investigate because she's still somewhere and I want to find out where. And then like I came across the NDEs on YouTube and stuff and just like probably watched so many hours.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I watched so many of them at the beginning, and then I kind of took a break and was, I was going through a lot of depression and things. Quit my job. I mean, it completely changed my life, and I live very differently now.
Yeah.
So
That's that makes sense. It changes everything, and you start living differently for a reason, because you can't live the same way. There's no same.
mm-mm.
So do you think you have a better idea of, you said you need to know where she is now, like, did all those NDE videos give you some closure or some peace that she's like, okay?
Yeah, definitely. I was very skeptical. I had to watch a lot of them until I started to kind of see a theme because they're all different. And yours is very different than other ones. Everyone's unique. And it's like, okay, well, then maybe it's a hallucination or something because why is every one of them different? But they all kind of have the same themes, though, that it makes it very obvious that, like, do you feel like you kind of get a custom experience that's tailored for you and everyone kind of gets their own custom experience that would help them or that makes sense to them? But they all have the same overarching themes about us all being connected. And I hear over and over the time isn't real. And I had that in my journey. It was actually terrifying to lose time. But
Yeah.
all these things, they feel like there's very similar themes. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that there are different experiences in different cultures, because we are somewhat a product of our individual culture, and specifically the land, the different places on the planet, different pieces of land with different human history. So there's a collective kind of iconography that can change different people's experience. And maybe that's, as you said, maybe that's tailored to each person for what they want or need. But really, the main event is those things that are common. Like that's kind of the fundamentals. That's like the things built of truth that will help you move through life, like the source of the wisdom, right? And that is definitely the interconnection, that we are all one, that we kind of individuate, we separate when we come and are born, and we have our own body and we have our own life and our own opinions. And then when we die, we return to this collective. And it's paradoxical because let's just call it spirit world, you can call it whatever you want. You can call it like, an energy field, returning to source. You can call it God if you want. Like, you can use whatever word you want. It's paradoxical because we say there's no time. And as you experience, that's very difficult to manage from our three-dimensional world and our logical world. So the fact that we return to a collective and yet we're still an individual, that's paradoxical. Unfortunately, that's just the nature.
It's just
where we're from. It's
just because we're human, it's paradoxical and it doesn't make sense. But as someone who's grieving a loved one, that has been really hard too, because if you say that we're all the same and that they've returned to source and are part of a collective, then it's like, well, then because each person is their own personality, and I know my daughter is my daughter, and then I want to see her again as my daughter. I don't want to see her as like this all is one thing, even though that's also beautiful. But it's hard just in my human brain to go, she's one with everything, but she's still part of me. She's still the Mikkel that I knew. You know what I mean?
And those two things are both true. And that there's no way around this paradox. There's no way around trying to figure it out. It's not really something you figure out. Like, we're talking about something that's real, It's not just an idea or like sci-fi. It exists that way. And that's the nature of that way. When we're born and when we have a life, we have gravity, we have polarity. Like there's poles on either side of the planet. There's 3 dimensions. We have time. So I can reach forward and pick up a coffee cup, and it takes time for me to reach forward. And there's a physical coffee cup, and I have intention. I want to reach forward and pick up the coffee cup. Those things are not part of the soul realm. There's no time. Everything is happening all at the same time. There's no individual intention. There's no time for you to have an intention, to move your hand forward, to get something. And there's no things. There's nothing separate from oneness. It's hard to understand because our brains are designed and have developed for a reason to get us through living in this realm with time, with gravity, with polarity, with intention, with physicalization, and it works, but we actually have a restrained, it's like we have blinders on. We have a restrained collection of senses. We have our 5 senses and maybe the 6th sense, like a knowing or a telepathy or something, but there's many more. There's this being sense on the other side. And so the reason why it's restrained is because if we had truly all our senses firing on this planet, it's too much. And so the pineal gland, it's in the center of the brain. It's this little spiral pinecone shaped thing. It manages secretion of melatonin and serotonin and other enzymes that control how much we see, controls how much of our senses are lit up or not. So when you said you did a psilocybin trip?
I did, yeah.
So psilocybin connects to the pineal gland. There's a chemical connection, and it cracks that open. Part of the reason why it's challenging and difficult yet beautiful is because all of a sudden you are open to far more senses. So you're sensing things you've never sensed before on different levels. We know that there's a full bandwidth of frequencies, right? There's like radio frequencies, there's television frequencies, there's even in color, there's infrared and ultraviolet that we can't see. So our senses don't see that. This is the same thing. So you do psilocybin and you're opening your senses that aren't usually used up to phenomena that you're unfamiliar with. So that gives you a sense, that gives you an idea of when we're talking about this realm, it's just hard to talk to. Like it's hard to talk about. It's hard to make sense of. You almost, like, I don't want to use the word faith really because it's a religious word, but you can trust that like your feelings are right. Like you can feel your daughter. You just trust that. Like you're good, And it is beautiful, like you said, her returning to the collective. It is beautiful. It's home. It's more home than any other. It's such a strong feeling of home. It's crazy. It's like this is a holiday, and then you go home to home. You're like, oh, the life on Earth was like a 2-week, holiday. It's strange. So both those things are true. Your connection to your daughter is totally true, and she has returned to this beautiful source where she's one with everything.
Yeah.
I don't know what
No, in this journey I've been on, I feel like that's a theme, that's one aha moment of me, is both can be true. Because there's so many paradoxes and so many things that don't make sense in this brain, but somehow they're true in this other realm that we can't understand. So how are they both true? Well, they just are. Like you're not made to figure it out, I guess. Because after my journey, I stayed awake for nights just trying to go, what? Like, I don't get it. What happened? But yeah, I had a spiritual guide that I integrated with, and he said that. He said both can be true, and don't try to understand everything because you never will. Just try and feel it in your heart.
Yeah, that's a good statement, is feel it in your heart, because we do know that. We do know what it's like to feel something as opposed to think something.
Mhm.
There's also, the heart is more than just feeling. Like, there's an intelligence in the heart. Heart intelligence is actually, it's become more, there's more research on it, how the heart responds to like environment, situations, relationships. And it's not just like beating faster or beating slower. It's secreting enzymes. It's changing the whole, your whole like your physiology, and it's being done through the heart, not the brain. And they do this through, ECGs. They put them on your heart. So science is starting to realize, like, the heart, it's not a brain, but it has its own kind of, it's as strong as the brain. So you can trust what you feel and put it side by side with what you think, and you're like, yeah, which is not something our society has done, right? We've been very brain oriented for so long.
Oh yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
and this concept that two paradoxical things can exist and be true, like quantum physics has proved that in the last 40 years. And with that original experiment where they're basically firing electrons, and one of them would spiral to the right and one of them would spiral to the left, and they're like, why are they doing this? Why isn't there a common thing? And of course, the only variable was the scientist in the room. So there's an intention. What they did is they involved the scientist and realized the scientist would intend it to spiral to the right, and it would. And the scientist would intend it to spiral to the left, and it would. And then they do these experiments with photons, like light energy. And light energy is what's, it's infusing the whole universe. It's what's flowing through our spine and our body, and it's responding to intention. But that's impossible. It's not impossible. So quantum physics right now is meeting spirituality in 2026.
So
So maybe that helps,
it definitely helps. I think there's a lot of people out there who are very scientific minded. I mean, if you grew up in the era that I did, it's all about science. And so if you can somehow like marry the two, science, and match it with spirituality, it's
Yeah.
so helpful, especially with grief, to be able to feel like you can actually scientifically sort of have evidence that you're not crazy, that this can
Yeah.
be true.
Yeah, because I'm sure that's such a, it's like a shock, right? You're almost in an emotional concussion having lost a daughter. So you're just searching for some grip or grounding, and you would think you're crazy for sure. And yeah, and so having this time being the time where we're finding these things collide and we're starting to agree that this is possible, it's pretty important for human beings. What you're doing is important, because you're not just, I'm going to make a podcast and talk about stuff. You're dealing with it. It's real, so that has value. That has value. If you're moving forward and searching for ways to integrate such a crazy event and finding ways, like, this is part of the movement forward.
Thank you. Same for you. What you're doing is massive. So with
Yeah.
moving forward, with talking about it and with your meditation and everything. But when I watched your podcast, I think you mentioned something about how you're a bit more sensitive after your NDE to energies, and I kind of feel that too.
Yeah, you are more sensitive now. Like, you just are. You've been, cracked open, I guess. And that's not easy. That's not easy. But it doesn't, you get good at it, and the fact that you're talking about it and you're not blocking it, because some people block what's happening, right? And so they're super sensitive, they're totally in shock, they're grieving, and they're like, no, I'm not dealing with that. Like, it's not getting you anywhere. So the sensitivity means you're tuning in to healing. That is the result. You have to be open in order to heal. The healings that I do are not one directional. Like, it's not me healing someone else. It's a collaboration, and I can help people open. But the deeper we go, they need to open, and then I meet them, and it's safe, and then we go further into the healings, and that is the way it's done.
Wow. Is when you're doing healings now, is that for emotional trauma and grief, or are you actually doing physical healings? What kind of healings are you doing?
It depends on the person. Sometimes they know. Sometimes someone comes in, they're like, you know, I'm really dealing with a situation in my life. Rarely is it I have a disease, or those are, it's hard to describe. They're harder to move the energy because it's dug in to the body. So what I do is more the source of those things. So where if a disease is a result of something, usually emotional, if it's a result of something physical, if you, I don't know, worked in a toxic environment and it affected your body, I'm not sure that the gifts I've been given kind of hone in on that. Yeah, the gifts I've been given are more like finding the emotional source, the energetic schism, and then working with that, and then the result may be that whatever the affliction, the physical affliction, will ease off. But I'm not some miracle worker or something. It's energy work. It's moving what's inside people and helping align and balancing your energy so that you're flowing. There's meridians in the body, so that's the kind of work that.
That's really cool. And do you feel like when you store that energy that it can manifest in the form of sickness or physical pain?
Yeah. There's many afflictions, diseases, syndromes that have their roots in emotional trauma, physical trauma, emotional trauma. Lots of them, not all of them, but definitely there's a source there. The body is like the projection screen for what's going on the inside. So something's going on in the inside and it extroverts itself over time. It takes time usually, but yeah, that is the nature of the body. It's kind of the sounding board. It's how things show themselves, and it's also the way you process things somatically through the body. There's somatic trauma therapy that goes in, isolates specific traumas, and they come out in certain areas of the body, and that's a whole field, somatic trauma therapy, which I did many years ago after the near-death experience. I did quite a bit of therapy.
Yeah, you've done it all. Okay. How about I just let you tell your story now? What happened when you were on your canoe?
Yeah, and if you have questions, don't let me ramble
Okay.
on too long. Yeah, so 25 years ago, I was getting ready to paint for the day. I'm an artist and I use my canoe to paint quite often. So I had a canvas stretched up. It was on the gunnels of the canoe and I pushed off from shore. It was February in BC in the mountains. The lake doesn't freeze. It was cold, but it was beautiful and there was waves. And I was in a time of life of change. I was quite tortured and pulled in different directions and needing wisdom, needing guidance. And so I asked for wisdom that day as I pushed off. I
Delivered.
Yeah, I was kind of wrestling with like the first dips of depression and was pretty scared. So yeah, and my work, I'm an abstract painter, that practice is part of this unraveling of subconscious layers. It's a seeking practice. And so I'd already been involved in that at that point for over 10 years. But I asked for wisdom. So I paddled out into the lake and the waves weren't big, but then there was a big wave and it filled the canoe quick. I flipped the canoe over and climbed back on top and I had a life jacket on and I kind of looked at the rate of wind and waves and did the math on how long it would take just to float back to shore because paddling wasn't going to work with an upturned canoe and I couldn't flip it over. And I decided I should swim to the closer shore, not in the direction of the wind. Started swimming and within seconds realized that my mind was completely absorbed in anxiety of this situation. And I could almost see like a little barometer of heat. And with the thoughts, it was just shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And I was losing my heat because my energy was going into my fear and my anxiety, which consumes a huge amount of energy. Fear and anxiety uses us up.
For sure.
So 1 year before that, I did a 10-day silent meditation with my first wife. She was pregnant. So at the time of the event, I had a 1-year-old daughter, my oldest daughter. And so I accessed that training, that 10 days of silent meditation, which was breath meditation, focusing on my breath. I didn't have the luxury of even being distracted for a moment. It was dire. So I went into breathing and I was doing breaststroke. I was a swimmer. I swam in high school on the team and I'd always swam. So I was a good swimmer. And so I got into that rhythm of breathing and swimming, and I started to call for help because I realized hypothermia was affecting me. Hypothermia turns everything into a movie, like you're watching someone else in a movie about someone swimming to shore. Then I realized, no, that's not a movie, that's me. You got hypothermia. This is happening. So I started calling for help. The hypothermia got more. The disconnection between myself, human and animal, went away. So I felt very connected to the fish in the lake and the birds. And I looked up and there was two bald eagles flying above me, circling above me. That seemed to be logical, of course. So while I was swimming, they went and found the nearest house. It was people that I knew. It was not that far away, and screeched and circled above the deck of the house until they came out on the deck in winter, which they were older folks that didn't usually do, but they heard me yelling, so they knew something was up. They weren't sure if it was a dying deer or a human or what, but Barb came down to the shoreline later and searched and eventually found me. So the eagles kind of ushered me back. So while that was happening, then I said goodbye. I realized I was not going to make it. I said goodbye to my new daughter, said goodbye to my wife, my parents, my life. It needed to be said. And then I saw a tunnel of light, which I thought was in the water. And I thought I swam down the tunnel of light. And I followed that tunnel, and there was kind of a veil, thin, gauzy curtain. And I passed through that veil, and there was kind of an environment, maybe an undetermined environment. And then there was another veil, and I passed through that, and it was like returning home to capital H home, like your kitchen.
I love that.
And there was some levity to it. There was almost a laughter because it was so beautiful. And in that, past that second veil, there was a download of understanding, of information, of everything. The nature of the universe, the earth, time, human beings, relationships, empires, building and crumbling, just the way all history and the way things unfold. There was an awareness of this reconnection to the collective, yet still an individual, and also something even greater than the collective that was part of the collective, but yet separate and greater and beyond anything else. So this multiple interwoven way of being, and it was evident that it was paradoxical to the human mind. It made us laugh. It made me laugh. Like this can't be, but it's obviously this is real. Far more real than life on Earth. And it seemed that I spent a lot of time there. That there was no time, but it was like a returning to the way, just the source. And I seemed to watch many souls go back down to the planet, live out their lives, come back, return. And I could kind of see these little sparks, little souls going down, living a life, coming back. And when they would return, it just was whatever they had done in that life. They were returning to the collective, and it's not a judgment-based return. If they behaved in a horrible way that created suffering, they go back and work on it. They behaved in a beautiful way that took suffering away, that helped with suffering. They still went back, but maybe not as many times. And it was like I was there forever. And then I was being returned to Earth, human life, and I was not interested in that. No, I don't want to go.
Yeah, that seems to be a common theme too.
Yeah, with that level of understanding, it's like, okay, yeah, my time is not up and I have to go back, and it's hard. Life on the planet is, it's hard. But then I was back in the water and I was still swimming. Somehow I made it to shore. I pulled myself up on shore and promptly fell down because I was frozen and I had no strength. And the air temperature was slightly warmer than the water temperature. So I warmed. And if you've ever had extremely cold hands or feet, when they warm up, it's excruciatingly painful. So I screamed and passed out from pain, hit the ground, woke up, screamed again, passed out over and over. Just absolute hell, returning to human form. Eventually, Barb made it down to where I was, realized who I was. They had whistles, emergency whistles, so she whistled back up, and Dick called emergency rescue, and she had brought some tea and had like shake 'em warming packs that you use when you're skiing, and we put them under my arms, between my legs. I drank some tea, and slowly I stopped screaming and going unconscious, and slowly returned to an understanding of maybe I was a person and where I was. It took a while, and it took a while for search and rescue to come and get me. And then they put me in a cage stretcher and used ropes to pull me up a cliff into the ambulance, took me to the hospital, and my doctor was there, and he took all my vital signs, and there was no apparent brain damage, and my vital signs had stabilized. He gave me some food, and I was home for dinner. So that's the event.
Okay, now I have lots of questions because I heard you say like the thing with the eagles and the fish, how you felt like you were almost one with them, and were you almost asking for help, letting them know? And was that kind of telepathic, or was it just you had this shared consciousness? Or
it was more like family. It was like brothers or sisters or cousins, and there wasn't a disconnection. It wasn't like, oh, we can't talk to animals. Animals don't talk to us. That was gone. It was just kind of obvious. It was like, hey, I need some help. Yeah, it seemed very obvious. Whether it was telepathic or not, I don't know, because I was in a hypothermic state. I mean, it must have been, because the eagles came.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And I heard you share before a funny thing about the fish, like since you had that connection with them, then you made a promise to them or something like that.
Yes, I think I did. I said, I need some help, and if I get some help, I promise I won't eat you anymore.
Yeah.
Which I forgot for 6 years, I think, until I was fishing on a friend's boat on Father's Day, and I kept my line in, and as it hit the water, the memory flooded back, and I was like, yeah, I'll be reeling in my word. I don't eat fish again.
Yeah, I think for people that are really in grief, it's where I was at for a long time. It's so easy to feel like, how is this real? How do we know this isn't a hallucination or something of your mind? The skeptics will say that. But when you had this experience, were you feeling like after it happened, was that real? Was that a hallucination? What just happened? Or did you know it was real? Were you like 100% sure that this was real, everything you experienced when you went through the tunnel?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There was no question.
You had no question.
No, 100% real. It was kind of more real than human life, and how I qualify that, I don't know. But it was beyond questioning. It would be foolish to question if that was real or not. And I do understand the skeptics who are like, well, it's the chemicals in your brain projecting this experience on your brain. And you know what? Okay, whatever. If you want to call it that, then that's okay. It doesn't diminish the reality and how deeply it affected everything. If you have to call it a chemical projection on my cerebrum, then you do that. But it doesn't mean it wasn't real. Like, work it out however you want to work.
And after this happened, did you start sharing your story with people? Were there people that didn't believe you, or did you immediately tell your doctor what happened?
No, I didn't tell people. don't remember the timeline of when I started to tell people and when I didn't. Soon after, I really experienced emotional breakdown, like I was coming apart. Whether that was because I couldn't integrate it or because I wasn't telling. I'm sure I told the story to some people. It wasn't integrated into who I was. It was part of the fracturing, I guess. I did a lot of therapy, different kinds of therapy in the next couple of years. It seemed to amplify everything I was going through. It gave me this great sense of understanding and wisdom, but the reintegration into human life was very difficult, which is common for NDEers because the structures of society and relationship, government that we've done here are based on faulty intention. A lot of them are based on control. They're based on imbalance. They're based on, money and power. And these are inherently flawed. They fail. So we tolerate that on this planet because everyone thinks that they want to get rich, or everyone thinks they want to be in power, or everyone thinks they need something other than what is. When you've gone through a return to the field of energy, this is so evident that it's imposed structure. There are agreements. We've all agreed, that when you sit in your car, you stay on the road. That's an agreement. And it's necessary, but it is an agreement. You could get in your car and just drive straight into a wall. It's a dumb thing to do. So we agree that we don't do that. It's a rough metaphor.
Yeah.
But I don't think I told a lot of people right away because I was grasping with what was going on. Within a couple of years, I separated from my partner, and I was still a dad. I took care of my daughter, but I spent a lot of time alone and spent a lot of energy working this out in my paintings. My paintings changed 2 days after the experience. They went from flat squares and rectangles to shapes, three-dimensional shapes. And I think a lot of my processing, did I tell people the story? Sure, but I processed the story through making that abstract work. And it was very dynamic, visceral, kinetic, traumatic. So that's where
I looked at your paintings too, and you can see that with how you made it more kind of three-dimensional and the shapes of the art. Yeah, it's really good. Good stuff. I guess when you were saying goodbye to your daughter and to your wife at the time, was that kind of telepathically? I'm curious if your wife felt anything at that time, like something's off, or did she energetically know any of this if you had a connection with her that way? Or
yeah, after the event, she was like, what was going on? Something was up today. I don't think she put her finger on what it was. The saying goodbye, I don't think it was like I wasn't really projecting that goodbye to them. I think it was just a stage. It was like, it's time for you to say goodbye because it was more about me, maybe.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned that you've gone through grief with losing her. Was that the wife that passed? The one that's
yeah, she passed.
Does having this experience and going through that kind of grief, like, do you feel like it's been helpful to you? Or I know it's still always hard, but
there's still grief because we're left here.
Yeah.
So, some of what you experience when you lose someone is where did they go? Like what happens? We were talking about that. What is the afterlife? Does it exist? And it's scary if there isn't one. Like, what do you just disappear? How can we organize that? But of course, the other part is just the grief of they're leaving. Life is different, and they're just gone. Shock, and so that's the same. And that hit me in the ways that it did, and it changed my life in the ways that it did. And that is processed in your heart, in your body. It takes time. It does. You do reconcile it. It's like a wound on your body, a deep cut in your arm or your leg. If you take care of it, it takes a long time, but eventually it heals, and there's scar tissue. It's a similar thing. The emotional body takes time. You think it'll never get better. It eases off. It just does. It doesn't go away, and it doesn't mean you're callous or you're unfeeling. That's just nature. So, and that's okay. That's okay. The other part of it, where she went afterwards, yeah, I don't question that. I know that she returned to that beautiful place. So I had a near-death experience. There was another veil that I didn't go through. If I went through that, I would have died and not come back. So I don't know exactly what the experience is when you pass through the next veil and you don't come back to your body. I don't know if she still has individual consciousness. I don't know if it's even a necessary question. That part is shielded from us who are alive, and that's just the nature of it. I do know that that whole realm is such a beautiful return to that energetic source that, in a way, like, once again, it's like, I don't know, don't overthink it. It's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah. What did it look like there? Is it something that you can describe what it was?
I didn't, even though I'm a visual person, it didn't present itself as a visual place. I know for some people it does. It was more a knowing. It didn't kind of solidify into things, but there is a glow. It seems to just be light. It seems to be not lit from outside, but just lit from within. And that's all it was, really. Everything that I explained to you existed as a knowing within that glow of light.
And when you said you kind of saw the souls cycling and going to Earth, was that something you saw, or was that kind of a knowing?
It was a
knowing.
Yeah, I describe it, like, when I talk about it, I animate it a bit and I turn it into seeing the souls, but it was a knowing. It's still in that glow. When my second daughter was born, with my wife now, I remember when she was conceived, seeing her soul come down, but I was physical. I was on the planet. So I remember seeing that. And I was like, whoa, that's what I saw from the other side, but it was a knowing. And now I'm kind of seeing it. I'm seeing the energy of that. So that's kind of where I get that animated description, like these little sparkles going to the green planet. And
so cool. You actually saw that?
I did.
Spark? Oh my gosh, was it when she was pregnant, or when she...
No, like when she was conceived.
When she was conceived?
Oh yeah, I was like, look at that.
And you knew? Did you know it was a girl?
Little sparkle. No, girl and boy and gender, those are things that exist in physical realm. This was just seeing a soul, so pre-physicalization.
That's so wild.
Yeah, so I talk about that cycle of living and dying like I've seen it, but it was a no.
So is that your gift after it you've been given, is you can see energies, like light energies sometimes, or do you have psychic abilities? What?
Yeah.
Sounds like you have healing abilities and your art has changed. What are the kind of gifts you have?
I have a bit of a premonition ability. It's not super clear. It's almost like a forward short-term memory. I kind of have a sense of what's going to happen in the next short term. I do see energy. It requires me to focus my mind. It's not a mind thing. I can see energy in people, and I can see when it's out of alignment and out of balance, and then I can use breath and intention to realign it and remove, like dislodge, not remove, but dislodge imbalance or accumulation of imbalancing energy sometimes. And that's usually, I don't really do that informally, like at a coffee shop with people I see. Like, it's a chosen state. So I choose that state by going inside, and then I can kind of perceive energy. I have a sense of it, just day to day walking around, but it's much stronger if I actually focus my attention.
I'm curious, when you do your meditating, are there things that get you close to the state you had in your NDE? Have you been able to get glimpses of that through breath work or through meditating or anything?
Yeah. The field, this field of light, this energetic field, the soul realm, the interconnected sense of being, God, spirit, you're accessing that through different access practices. We call them, some people can access that, they would say, through prayer. You can do this through meditation. Meditation is basically concentrating your mind, like on focusing on something so that you're not absorbed in your passing thoughts. And after your concentrated mind is calmed down and you're no longer distracted by your thoughts, it becomes a meditative practice where this flow of energy, of light, this glow that we're talking about, you realize that that is what is happening right now, and you're drawn into it, and you're realizing you're aware of this. So what is watching this? What is watching the thoughts slow down, and what is watching you return to this glow and this beautiful flow? So you're accessing, that's an access practice. Using hallucinogenics is an access practice. It chemically affects the body and the brain to remove our awareness from the body and the brain and refocus that on other dimensions, or this flow, essentially this flow state, this light. There's some religious practices that do that. There's indigenous practices all over the world that are all different. Humans have figured out a lot of ways to tap into this, and it is the same space. It is the same place.
And for me, I've experienced a similar, like after your NDE, how it was really hard and you went through your depression. I feel like that's kind of been my process with my spiritual awakening and my grief as well. Do you find it's hard to balance between worlds, kind of between this spiritual side and the side that has to live with the rest of the humans and pay bills? And when you get a glimpse of this, it feels like this is almost sort of like not real, but we take it so seriously. And I've struggled with that a lot, going back to real life after a journey or after learning all these things and hearing the things that people complain about and watching what the governments are doing. And it's really hard to exist. And that's been a source of a lot of depression for me.
It brings up those questions. Why are we in this state? Why is our society, why is our culture so fragmented and broken and toxic? And there's reasons for that. Part of being a human being coming to Earth and having this opportunity. So it is an opportunity to exert your will, your intention. And I use that example of reaching out for a coffee cup, which you can't do in the spirit world. There's no time, there's no intention, there's no physical. So it's almost like this is another realm, and there's some reason why we have created this opportunity to have a choice, which means we have an opportunity to make bad decisions and good decisions. And there's been a lot of bad decisions made that create more bad decisions, that create situations that are stressful, and people react to those with more bad decisions. And you do that enough times over thousands of years, and you have a patriarchy. You have a broken society that's obsessed with war. And that's what we've got, because there's just a cause and effect of making a decision, and it results in another decision that's not a good decision. And so dealing with this schism that you just described, of this beautiful world of perfection and simplicity, and how do we reconcile this world that we're in right now? Well, there's a reason why we come back. There's a reason why I'm sent back. There's a reason why we do this, because there's some incredible beauty in having your own choice. And at a certain point, stepping away from the chaos of the mind and labeling everything and judging everything, when you step away from that enough day to day, you realize that the problems of life are actually opportunities of life. In track and field, you have hurdles, right? You're running a race and you're jumping over these hurdles. That racer is not engaging with each hurdle as if, this is such a problem. this is such a problem. How am I going to get over this next one and the next one? That's not the way you run a race if you want to win. You know,
Yeah.
to engage in jumping over those hurdles, these are opportunities for me to excel at what I'm doing. I'm going to do the next one even better. But that's a perception. That's a decision of how am I going to perceive this next hurdle? And we can now take that word hurdle and we can replace it with problem in our lives. And we have these lives where every day there's some new problem. Some of them are small and we solve them. We move through them and they don't affect us. Some of them are huge and they crush us, or we let them crush us, or some version of that. There's a place of awareness where you're stepping back from judging to the point where the next problem is an opportunity for you to engage with that problem and solve that problem and not release negativity, complaining, aggravation, and to engage with a difficult situation step by step and moving forward. You have to be very present, and it's a challenge, but so is a hurdle race. That is the challenge. So there's some kind of gift in this, and it's the gift of beauty and horror. It just is, but that's human life. There's this polarity, right? And that is why we come back here. We are coming back to experience the opportunity to make a mistake, another opportunity to respond badly, and another opportunity. And then you decide, you know what? I'm going to make a change. I'm going to respond to this differently. And there's some magic in that. And it's shared. Like when we engage in a traumatic situation and we move through it and we share a way through it for other people, that's healing. And maybe I don't really have all the answers, but it seems that is what we're talking.
Yeah, it does. Do you feel like that's kind of why you were sent back, is what your purpose is to heal, and humanity overall is to experience all the polarities and kind of evolve or learn?
Yeah, it seems that is the reason. And because we're in the midst of such chaos, it seems like how could that even be? But if you pull back at the long view, if we really did, if every person chose to be present and connect to this source, you kind of have to rely on this source. You have to connect to this flow of energy and make better decisions repeatedly over and over and over. And if everyone did that, that would change our reality. But that would be a self-generated change where people decided. There was no alien ship that came down and snapped the fingers and we all just, everything's fine. It's just not that easy. We have to work through this. There's something about that. It's hard.
Yeah, it is. Do you feel like with your intuitive or energetic feelings that it is starting to shift? Like we're in the midst of the chaos, but maybe that means we're reaching a tipping point where we're waking up and being more present or making better decisions in the future?
It does seem like in 2026, there's a lot more people talking about this. We're seeing science and spirituality merging. They're coming to the same point. There might be no equation at the end of that point that solves everything. The question of the Big Bang will probably never be solved. It's magic.
Yeah.
Might always be a problem. But it does seem that there's more people talking about this than there was 50 years ago, much more than 80 years ago and 100 years ago, 110 years ago. Like the end of the 1800s, there was kind of a spiritual revolution in Europe and it came to North America. But we only know that because it was written about. It wasn't something that swept through massive society.
Yeah.
So sure, yeah, I hope that this is the time. There's lots of astronomical kind of events. If you're into astrology, there's a lot of kind of endings and beginnings. There's cultural revolution all over the world. There's gender revolution that has been huge in the past few years. Like this is the physicalization of these internal changes. I think that, the other day I used this metaphor. So when a child is learning to walk, they're crawling and then they want to learn to walk. They get up, they fall down. They get up, they fall down. They get up, they fall down over and over and over. And sometimes they fall down and skin their knee and hurt themselves. And they're in that moment of falling down, they're so mad. They're screaming, they're crying for their mom. Like that moment is horrible.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm never doing this again. This is never going to work. But then it wears off, and then they try and walk again. And eventually, through many times of falling down and being totally consumed by the misery of this is not working, and that's not even just a child walking, that's like a human process. Eventually they walk. So if that is not just a baby learning to walk, but if that's actually a human process, if that's actually an earth process of like plants seeding, growing, getting hit by bugs or something, dying, trying again, like if this is a universal flow, it's a universal sine curve. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. That is the nature of the universe. So if we're doing that right now, and right now we've just fallen down for a couple thousand years, right? And we're on our knees, and we're it's misery. We're just in reaction. This is terrible. But if we're standing up again, maybe we'll fall down again. Maybe we'll stand up again. But if this is reflecting the flow of the universe, it's eventually tending towards better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that's where we are. I'm not much of a speculator, though, because I'd rather be right now working on what we just talked about. Like, well, how do you deal with this right now? How do you make a change right now? Well, you can't. You leave the building, and the next person you see, you give them a smile, and they respond, and it changes that moment. That's kind of worthwhile.
Yeah, so true. I think that's something I've realized a lot through this too, is the ripple effect of things. Some people have life reviews, and I've heard of other people who have those, and they realize how certain actions they did affected other people and how it rippled into the world, and how in every moment you can make that choice to be a positive energy or put out goodness in the world. And it's pretty cool. I mean, just yesterday, I'm in Utah, and it was snowing, and I was driving up the road to come home just in my neighborhood, and some guy was just walking in the snow and had the biggest smile on his face. He was just like in love with walking through the snow. And I slowed down and just looked at him because I wanted to soak in his positive energy. And I saw as I drove past, he put his arms up in the air, and I thought that actually just made my entire day just by some guy enjoying walking outside.
Yeah, it doesn't take much.
Yeah, it doesn't. Thank you so much for sharing everything. I'll ask one final question. Since my podcast is the AHA podcast, what's been your most profound AHA moment after your NDE that we've taken away from it?
The most profound moment, I would say, is that I can integrate that experience through disciplined breath practice. For me, that works for some people. For years, my integration process was through making art, and it had an effect. It did. But focused breath meditation is like a rocket compared to that. And yeah, it's integrative as opposed to like isolated event kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So that would be the aha moment for me.
That's awesome. And if people want to reach out to you or talk to you, how can people find you?
I'm at my website is www.jeremydown.com. You can find me on Instagram, Jeremy_down. And yeah, you can send me a message.
All right. Are you still doing your art as well?
Yeah, I'm still painting, and it's all up there on the website and the Instagram. And I'm a musician as well, so I also have my last couple albums upon streaming on Spotify and Apple and Tidal and YouTube under my name. So yeah, I'm still working.
Very cool. And where are you? I know you're in Canada, and you mentioned you were in BC. Are you still there?
I'm back and forth. I go back and forth between BC and the Kootenays and in Ontario on Georgian Bay, which is part of Lake Huron.
Okay, very cool. Well, I've never been to Canada, but someday.
Right on.
Yeah. Thank you very much for taking time today.
Thank you, Allie.
Yeah, I'm very, very grateful to you for sharing your story and helping people. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.